Hey everybody, my guest is a fan favorite coming back. Man, it's been almost 3 years. It's Danielle Hughes. Last time I had on Danielle, I believe we recorded like March or April of 2020. A little bit different time in the world. Here we are, June of 2023. I was locked in a house. You were locked in a house. We were wondering what the heck was going on. And we're here 3 years later. So glad to have you back on to catch up with you and hear what's new in your world. And I know you have some personal things and a whole bunch of new business stuff. So we're going to get right into it. So Danielle, first of all, great to see you again. Great to have you on.
Thank you. You too.
How are you doing?
I mean, it's crazy. I'm like, has it been 3 years? Has it been more? What is time? Right.
What is time? How old am I?
Was it during the pandemic? I mean, if you say so, I'm going to have to go back and look now. It might have been pre, but who knows? What is up with me? It's been a whirlwind. I have, my business is traditionally copywriting and branding. And at some point, it has moved a lot more into workshops and training and speaking. And I am all in on this concept that I call personality branding, which is putting more of yourself into your message. And the difference to me between personal and personality, personal means private. And I think when you tell someone they need a personal brand, they presume that they have to share everything about themselves. Right. And it's like an all or nothing game. But our personality is who we are. And that's how we connect with other people. So by claiming your personality brand, you're in control of what you share and how much you share. Because we are dialing up and down how much of our personality we give to other people, depending on the interaction.
I love it, man. I already have I have a list of like 16 questions in my head. So where do I want to start? So so you moved more into workshops, speaking, making a bigger impact on people. What kind of audiences do you like to deliver this message to?
Well, and that's interesting too, because I started out with like solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people who had their own business because they were like, I'm in a crowded market, or I'm not standing out, or my company is not distinct. And what I started to realize is that I was getting either people in job transition or people who'd been promoted or just employees or managers or teams who were also looking at, their LinkedIn profiles or their internal intranet bios and realizing that everybody sounded the same. So it's really morphed now into everyone because we live in a world now where everybody has to have their own brand, for better or for worse. And to me, that's you infusing a little bit of who you are so that you're not just telling someone your job description or your job title, which wasn't even written for you, right? It was written for a role, which you happen to step into. So how do you make it your own? How do you tell your story? And how do you highlight how you think and what makes you different?
I think you know this. I've spent 2 years at Brand Builders Group as a strategist there, and we are specifically a strategy firm. No implementation, just strategy. And we have a thing the module's called Brand DNA. It's very similar to that. And I'm sharing this with you and with the audience because my experience of leading lots and lots of people through that, of getting clear about that, it's like therapy a lot.
Yes.
Have 100%. I've seen so many people cry in group settings, frustration. They get like pissed because the way we do it, and I want to hear about your process, the way Brand Builders does it, we go, what's the one word problem that you solve? And it's so frustrating for most people, including myself, because I was a client there before. And I was like, one word, like that's ridiculous. But like the narrowing down so then you can expand your scope. Yeah. And I say that because being in this space and working with people like that and being somebody who's also been on the receiving end of this sort of work is a lot of people don't do it because it's actually not that easy.
It's so hard. People tell me it's the hardest thing that they've ever done. They're like, why is it so easy for me to do it for other people, but I can't do it for myself?
Totally.
So hard. And a lot of it is because we are hard on ourselves or we don't recognize what we're good at. A lot of it could be we're trying to people please. So our message sounds so convoluted because we have all the things. And it is, to your point, it's so transformative I think a lot of people go into this work and they think, oh, it's just a bio, like it's just some words on a page. But when you take ownership of how you want to show up in the world and how you want to be known, everything changes. I see people's body language go from like hunched and tight and unsure to like they stand up and their shoulders are back and they feel proud and they're smiling. And they can't even believe it either. They're like, how is just like me changing my bio completely transforming my comfortability, my confidence? It's so crazy.
It is crazy. When I do we call them expert bios. It's just the module name. It's just your bio, and and I'm sure you do the same thing. We'll do the full long bio, and then we'll make it more concise. And you get like
correct.
Yeah, version of you get a one word. Mm-hmm. Here's a speaking bio.
Yep.
Here's like your full about me page.
Yep.
It's funny, and I would almost 100% certainty that you've had this experience when you say to people, let's talk about all the things you've accomplished and done. People's general reaction, most people's like, oh, I haven't really done that much. And then we have a specific way to ask, like, what have you published? What have you authored? Like all these things. And then people will go, oh my gosh, I've done so much. Like that was my experience too. And I say all this because as somebody who understands this as well, this is why coaches have coaches, why branding strategists need a branding strategist, why therapists have therapists, why we all need another person in our corner besides ourselves, because our brain is not wired to do this for ourselves. And I'm probably at the same level of you in terms of the pure strategy. I can sit down with somebody in 1 hour, knock out a lot of things. But if you said to me right now, hey, Jason, tell me these 3 things, I'd be like, oh. And my guess is you probably have thousands of hours of this work. You probably would struggle with it as well. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
I like to talk about how I was my first client. I did not set out to create a personality brand. I did not set out to put more of myself into my message. I was a generic copywriter came out of corporate, had my own company, and was just Danielle Z. Hughes copywriting. And I was like, I don't want a niche. I want to do all the things. I want to serve all the people. You can't put me in a box. I was so generic. And luckily, like many people, I did have relationships from people that I had worked with who were starting to hire me. But after a while, I was doing no marketing. I was doing no networking because I had nothing to market around. Yeah. And I ended up realizing I got to take control of my own message and I got to figure this out. And I hired a creative coach who helped me create my company. And she's the one, when we were writing the copy for my website, who kept pushing me. And she's like, you got to put more you on the page. And I was like, but that's not professional, right? Air quotes. And she helped me like figure out that we have to redefine what professional means. Professional is not, traditional or conservative or stale. Professional just means doing the work you're going to say you're going to do, being respectful of people, etc. And that personality piece is the humanity. That's the friendliness, that's the warmth, that's the connection. And the more that I started to put myself out there, the more it started to resonate, the more business I got, the more my niche kind of found me. And so it's interesting because my approach, one of the things that I hear from people is not that they haven't done anything, because I tend to push back from like, I'm not looking for a laundry list of your accomplishments. Like put that on your resume. I don't care. I want more of their story. But what I hear from people is I'm not interesting. There's nothing interesting about everyone. And I'm like, that is bullshit. Everybody
cool. And you want to be an entrepreneur, have fun.
Right. And it's like, you got to pull it out of them. Like, no. And then you start getting them to tell their story and they say something that like some crazy thing that they do for fun. And I'm like, that is so interesting. We could have an hour just talking about that. That's what I want to know about.
Yeah. And so I'm interested in your perspective on this. You do business with people for services for your business. You have somebody who works for you, like you need services, software, etc. Yeah. I have a whole bunch of people I do business with in a variety of contexts. More and more, I don't care that you're the expert or that you have a gazillion hours or that. I care that that when we spend an hour together, I'm going to have a good time.
100%. Yes.
And 100%. So many, and I think that is my person. Like I'm much more interested in like spending an hour with Danielle, having a good time, working on my stuff, smiling, laughing together than like, is Danielle the very best at what she does in the world? I don't really actually care about that so much because I think it's partially I trust myself that I'm pretty good at some things too and combining. And I recently had this experience with redoing some of my tech stuff where I'm like, I love this person. And they're new in the business. And it's been amazing because when I look forward to the calls versus, and you know this from working with lots of entrepreneurs, some people's personalities aren't that interesting to be with, like, and they're like really good at what they do. And they have the success stories. And I'm like, I don't need to hire a personal Accenture or Ernst and Young. I want somebody that I can like, hey, Danielle, like my days kind of suck shit so far. I know if I'm in a good mood to like do this, and you'd be like, yeah, let's do it anyway. Cool. Like that sort of thing. And I say all this because, and I want to get your input on this as somebody who's in this too, is the idea of pure expertise and experience, I think, is becoming more commoditized because of technology. And there's so many people that are, there's a million copywriters, there's a million coaches, there's a million consultants, there's a million people that do all these things. And I just like, for more and more, what I'm finding that gets me hired and what has me hire people is because I find you interesting to work with, and it's a good vibe check. Not, oh, wow, Danielle, can you send me 83 testimonials of the work you've done that's grown $1 billion in sales? I'm like, I don't really, I mean, I care to a very small point, but I really care more like, hey, do I like Danielle? Like, that's actually for me, like my primary point of entry for hiring people.
And I think 100% most people, it's who you are first, what you do second. Because, and especially if you got into business for yourself, the point of going into business for yourself is to choose who you get to work with. Why would you choose to work with people you don't enjoy spending time with? And I'm hearing from a lot of people that come to me that they hired somebody in, let's say a similar realm who was the best or an expert, and this person just told them how to do things. And so it's very prescriptive. It's, I'm the expert and I have this way of working and I'm going to shoehorn you into this, instead of let's figure out the best way for you as an individual to work. And, when people come to me and they say, well, talk to me like, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't have personality brand, or I'm this. I'm like, that is the beauty of it, is you're in control. I am never going to tell you this is how it should be. This is right. This is wrong. I'm going to tell you, we have to find something that feels good for you. And my only mandatory is you got to tell me one thing that you like to do for fun. It's got to be somewhere in your bio.
Love it.
One thing. That's it. And that's the minimum. And then you see, and most people, they'll start small and then they'll realize, you know what, I actually want to add this, and I actually want to add this, and I actually want to add this. And it's organic and evolving, and nothing is fixed. And that's, as you get more comfortable with who you are and putting yourself out there, you're going to want to add more, because those are the things that people are going to respond to. Nobody's responding to all your accomplishments. They're responding to the fact that you collect vintage vinyl, or you just hiked Everest, or you've, knit 500 sweaters. Way more interesting than anything you've ever done.
Yeah. I can, for anybody listening that wants to sell me something, and a lot of you are on LinkedIn trying to sell me something every day, I'm sure it's the same for you, Danielle.
And in my email,
and I say that with love because I love salespeople, but I'm like, really, that's your pitch? So bad. If you want to have me get on the phone with you, tell me that you're a Deadhead and or a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I will very likely talk to you. Like, that is going to be interesting because we're going to connect on something that I actually care about, not that you've helped coaches scale to $1 million in 60 days or whatever it is.
But it's also like, it doesn't have to be a direct connection either.
No.
Right? You're a Vikings fan. I'm a Giants fan. So it's also, we don't have to agree on the hobby. We can say, oh my God, you're this. Let's talk about it. I'm this. Or I see that you do this thing. I don't even know what that is, or I have no interest in it, but I want to know more because now you're just more interesting. So like, I have a client who's a bird watcher, couldn't care. I mean, nothing could be more boring to me, but it's totally relating to what she does. And it just makes her interesting. And when I started to talk to her about this, I was like, okay, I don't know that I'm convinced I'm going to go bird watching, but like, you're so passionate about it that I just love this so much.
Yeah. Oh, passion. I mean, no matter. Yeah. I don't like the same. Bird watching sounds
torturous, but again, it doesn't,
I get it. No, but I get it.
With it.
No, but the fact that somebody is passionate about what they do, that is another thing that is very attractive to me, because I'm a very passionate person. If you ever taken disc, I'm like a high I. I like the influence and the excitement of it.
Yes.
So even things that are even personal branding and things like medical, attorneys, accountants, insurance folks. Like I've worked with a bunch of those people at brand builders, and when they actually in their brand can capture that they actually care, that's really attractive.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you've worked with clients like that too, where like these kind of like, I would call them commoditized industries, very commoditized, like insurance, very commoditized. Most of us buy on price. And if you like, I would pay a little more if somebody's like, this is why I do what I do. I love it. Like on the week, I don't want to know that you're studying actuary tables on the weekend. That's not interesting to me. But if you're like, hey, when I'm away from here, I actually don't pay any attention to insurance. I'm out motorboating, sailing or something. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like interesting.
I actually don't know that I agree that most of us buy on price for those things, because those are high trust industries.
They are.
Like if you're a financial advisor, you're an attorney, you're an insurance broker, I need to freaking trust you, and I will gladly pay you a little bit more if I feel like you're not just selling me something to sell me, that you've gotten to know me, that there's a connection, that we can relate. And, my financial advisor was a previous client of mine, and like we have built up this trust and rapport. Same thing with my insurance guy. Like, I just think that these are industries that traditionally that was it. It was like, let's compete on price. But you can only compete on price so much, because there's only so low that you can go. And then what? You're competing on price, but you have to also make that connection. And the more you can connect with your clients, the more they're going to refer you. My financial advisor now has 3 of my friends as clients, because he has built up such trust with me. And it's not because he's the cheapest. It's not any of that. It's because he cares, and he gets to know you, and he makes recommendations based on you and not on hitting some number or hitting some metric.
Yeah. And also going back to the technology piece, you might know this even better than me, but I think the latest statistics I think it's from HubSpot, is that at least in the software industry, like enterprise, like businesses buying software, that like 83% of the sales cycle is done by the time you talk to a sales rep, because it's all online. The pricing, the features, the benefits. You can go to Capterra G2, you can read reviews, the testimony. It's all out there, and it's really easy to access. So the idea now, like marketing is less about education and more about personality and persuasion, I would say, because I think marketing back in the day was like, if you think about marketing, like back in the day, even like Mad Men, like the point was like, oh, Ford has a new car. It's called a Mustang. I didn't know that before because I didn't drive by the dealership. Oh, what's a Mustang? Now I'm like, oh, let me go build my Mustang online, and I can actually order it online almost. Yeah. So it's just, I mean, I think you actually can. You actually can now, which is mind-boggling.
Yes.
Yeah, which is mind-boggling. Like, I'd like to talk about some of the pitfalls that clients you worked with or clients that you didn't work with, that maybe like you saw their brand later. What are some of the pitfalls, and what are some of the consequences of not like really honing in on this for yourself as a solopreneur or an entrepreneur running a business? Like, what are some of the things that you see people, they just either don't get, or they're not willing to do, they're not willing to invest in? And then what are some of the consequences?
I mean, I think the consequences are you are forgettable, instantly forgettable. If you are in an industry where you are competing, and what is going to make someone choose you, if you haven't put in the work to kind of define who you are and how you think and forge those connections, someone's going to pick someone else. There's no reason for them to choose you. If you are job hunting, and again, all of your LinkedIn or your resume is just this laundry list, I mean, again, like a lot of people have the same skills. And this is not to say that anybody is less valuable, but it's how do you also present yourself so that you're setting yourself up for the right environmental fit and culture fit. And if you are holding yourself back and you're just putting down tasks, you might land the role and then get into an organization that you hate because they didn't know who you were and you don't know who they are, and you have not defined how you want to show up in the world and the right environment that's going to support you. So the pitfalls are that you can never be comfortable with who you are, because if you are not putting yourself on the page, you're not going to be able to show up physically, virtually, etc. It's extremely
Yeah.
detrimental. It's extremely taxing mentally, emotionally. And we can have a whole conversation about the whole bring yourself to work, because I
Yeah.
just think that that is like rainbows and unicorns. I don't think anyone, no matter the color of our skin, the gender, the whatever, can bring our
No.
whole self to work.
No.
I think the idea is to bring as much of you as you want to and are comfortable, but like not all of you should be at work. That's just never how it should be. You got to leave some stuff at home, right? So, but what is enough that you're going to show up and do your best work, that you're going to connect, that you're going to build relationships?
Yeah. My experience, I'm just about to hit 4 years running my own business, and I've had a, steady incline in everything I'm doing: podcast, business results, more fun, less work, not less work hours, but doing more things that fill me up. And what I'm
Yes.
finding is the more I lean into who I actually want to be and just be honest about it, the better it is for me too.
Yep.
And I know from training coaches, from having a lot of friends that are coaching, and I know you've worked a lot with coaches, and I'm just going to speak in this space because this is the space I'm in.
Sure.
And you mentioned this earlier, the whole, well, I want to serve everybody and all this. Like, the truth of it is you actually can. And the truth of it is, for somebody like Danielle and for somebody like me, if you look at my website, it's very niche on one specific industry. And if you look at my one-on-one client list, about 3/4 of them are not in that industry. Because, like you said, I get referrals.
Yep.
And people understand that if Danielle can help a Fortune 500 brand, she can very likely help them, even if it's not specifically called out. What people may not understand is who Danielle is. And like the personality, what it's like to spend time with her on Zoom and like go through her process. And that's the beauty. And like, I didn't really understand personal branding. We call personal branding at BBG, personality branding. I'm with you. There can certainly be a difference, is understanding that how important that is, because people want to spend money and do business with people they like. And like you said, the commoditization of all the stuff, or the free, a lot of the marketing stuff is now free through AI or free. I know you have some free great. I mean, I could do a lot of work with the stuff you offer for free.
100%.
Like I could get a long way. If somebody listened to this podcast and reached out to me, they're like, hey, I've noticed that you do these 3 things. Would you spend 15 minutes with me? I would spend 15 minutes and just give you whatever you want for free. Yes. And so it's not hard to get the free stuff. But is the experience worth paying for? Is it worth, and like, what's the end result? And for me, the end result always has to be, do I look back and say it was also enjoyable spending time with this person?
Yeah.
Because I've not always had that experience, and it's brutal.
Yes, I would agree with that. I will say a couple things. So the more that I have put myself out there, the more that I've liked almost all my clients, because I think almost all of them say, oh my God, you're exactly what I expected, which is the point. I want you to read my website and be like, she sounds like my kind of person. And that's 99% of what I get. I also feel like I'm not here for everyone, because I am not here to educate anyone. You are either ready or you're not. I am not here to convince you. There is no persuasion. And 100% agree with what you said. If you can take my stuff and do it on your own, I am so happy when that happens. It is very rare. It is just very rare, because most people, it is very hard for them. And while it seems easy, it is not. So, but I've had some people who like did one of my cheaper like courses or did something and turned in amazing work. And I'm like, good for you. Like, I'm so impressed. And then there's people who start there and are like, you know what? I know myself. I'm never going to do this. Like, can I just work with you?
That'd be me.
Yeah. I have a friend who calls it like throwing money at the problem. Like, what am I going to pay for? It's like, I have someone clean my house because I don't want to clean. Like, that's something I'll pay for. I'll never pay someone to do my own laundry because I don't mind and I can do it. So it's like, you pick the things where you feel like there's value for you. And my clients, whoever comes to me, and it is a surprise, like you said, they're all over the place in terms of like where they are in their career, who they are demographically, what industry they work in. It does not matter. And I'm getting so many more people who are senior leaders at organizations who have no interest in leaving their organization, but they look at their LinkedIn page and they're not a thought leader. They're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, this doesn't represent me. And I just want to set myself up to be that person so that I can be more active for my organization and I can start posting. But I don't want to post because I don't want anybody looking at my profile right now because it's embarrassing.
Or the other thing that a lot of people will do on LinkedIn is go, oh, Danielle's suddenly posting a lot. She must be looking for a job.
And that's not true anymore, right? It's
Not
like
true.
gone
Yeah.
from a job search platform to a thought leadership platform. And that's why when companies, hire me, and I'm sure they hire you to come in, it's like sometimes there is that, well, won't people leave? And it's like, as well as I do, people don't leave because they update their bio.
No.
They update their
No.
bio because they're ready to leave because they don't feel
Right.
supported. But if you're an
Yeah.
organization that wants to support your people and says, I want our people to have these stellar bios because I want to attract other talent and I want us to know what they're good at, they're more likely to stick around and they're more likely to
Yeah.
then be a high performer.
If the reason that somebody hasn't started the job search is because they haven't invested in their LinkedIn, they're not really interested in a job search because I mean, you can go out and get that service. It's not very expensive. And if you already have a
Yeah.
full-time job, you can very likely afford that service. And
Yeah.
also any company that thinks that would be a blocker would be very,
I mean, it's a lot of companies, unfortunately. And that's the ones that are, penny wise, pound foolish, right? They're just
yeah.
thinking, no. This is how we keep our people is we don't teach them how to create their own brand. No, that's how you create sheep that don't have any way to think outside the box or
Yeah.
show up or invested in your organization.
You mentioned something else I want to touch on. It's the idea of no selling, no persuading. I'm with you in my private practice one-on-one. I've reached the same point where if somebody wants to hear what coaching is and whether it might be a good thing for them,
About this coaching thing you speak
they're
of.
like, oh, I heard that coaching could be helpful. Why would and I haven't had this in a lot, and this is a good example through referrals, my brand, just the way I think position myself for just like, and it's also, this is nothing about me. I'm just going to call it out. Much of being an entrepreneur is law of attrition and just staying the course.
Yes.
Because so many people that go in, they either can't afford it, they decide it's not for them. I've worked with some people and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're like, you know what, this actually isn't for me. Like, I don't really like working for myself. I don't like having to generate clients. I mean, I don't know anybody who does, but like, there's nothing wrong with that if you try something and you decide you don't like it. But the persuasion of like, well, now that I've told you about my copywriting service, like, what would it take you to get to sign on the dotted line today? Like, I do not
say that.
No, I don't either. I used to, because I came from a sales background. So that's what you're trained to do is like push and like, it just doesn't work. And it just doesn't work. And also then people show up and then people don't want to feel sold to. Like they show up, they pay you. And then they're like, well, so Danielle, what are we doing here? And like, oh, like, and then I call that the value context is you're constantly fighting against like, oh, well, I paid these multiple thousands of dollars for Danielle, and then I did this thing, and maybe it's good, or maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but it hasn't generated new clients. And then you're always in like a value battle versus people just being like, hey, like, this is for me. It's like being in a relationship.
What's that like?
Well, Danielle, that's the next topic. And now we're getting to the meat of the thing now. I'm for those who haven't listened to my episode of Danielle from a few years ago, I think I promised her some potential dates, and I don't know that I followed up on that. So yeah, I don't know, but I think I know you have a little more time on your hands now. You're going to have a little more time on your hands, a little more travel. So, I trust you. Just bring your personality. How does this whole conversation, how can, as a coach, I'm curious, how is everything we talked about today related to your love life? Kidding.
Well, what's so funny is I talk about like using your personality brand as like a dating profile as well. When people are, say to me, why would I put more into my LinkedIn or whatnot? I'm like, how do you start the conversation? The idea is to get someone to want to start a conversation with you, whether you're an individual solopreneur or whether you work in a company or whether you're job searching. It's the same thing with a dating profile. If your dating profile is blank or boring, no one can start talking to you. But if you give them nuggets of things that are interesting, it gives them something to ask you. And with the same thing with your bio, like your opening line could be something so interesting and weird and wacky. It could talk about your childhood, get me invested, tell me the story, make me want to lean in. And the same thing goes for dating, right? It's like if
Yeah.
somebody's just like giving you like, oh, I like to do this, I like to do this, I like to do this, I'm already asleep.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Danielle, I'm going to wrap up with something I've never
Yeah.
done here before.
Ooh.
We're going to do some speed questions for you, and I'm going to make these up on the fly.
Oh, I suck at these, but let's go ahead.
Perfect. I know you're like,
wait.
if I can write them down. No, dream job, money doesn't matter. What would you be doing right now?
Oh, I would be Phil Kogan from The Amazing Race. Like he's the host of The Amazing Race. He just gets to travel around the world. He doesn't have to do anything other than stand there and welcome people to the different destinations. I mean, get to travel the world. Don't really have to do anything. You can, you know,
Just
you
get to look good, get paid a bunch of money, work for CBS.
And then you probably get to like chat and shoot the shit with the contestants off screen. And I mean,
laugh at how ridiculous they are.
Yeah. And somebody else is paying for you to travel the world. So either that or the former Anthony Bourdain, like something in that realm. Although having read one of the more recent books that his producer just wrote, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes. It was a lot of work. But the idea of just traveling, getting paid to travel and like go into people's cultures and homes and experience their food, the dream for sure.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Do you watch The Bear on Hulu?
I don't. I know. I've heard. I might start now that I have all this.
It's spectacular. It's not about food and travel, but it's about a restaurant, and I think you'd really appreciate it. It's about fine dining, not fine dining, and just that industry. Talk about branding and craziness, according to that show. And I think people, if you have friends who work there. All right, so that's first one.
Okay.
So you, as I mentioned before, without going into the details, you have a little bit more freedom in your life here coming up soon, based on some family dynamics. If you can either share with the audience if you want.
My son just graduated from high school, so he'll
Danielle's son just graduated from high school. Congratulations! So Danielle's becoming an empty nester. Congratulations.
I'm going to write about that term. I hate that term so much, but let's table that for another time.
I have a guest coming on that I met, and she's coming out with a book on how women specifically can plan for being an empty nester before it hits you. And I was like, that is a book that's probably going to be a bestseller. She's a former Microsoft executive. Yep. She ended up, her and her husband made the decision that she was going to stay home. They had 3 children, and she's just completely, she lost a lot of that.
But her consumed by her children. Yes.
Yeah. And then she's like, and then one day she got up, and I know her. She was like, and then they were all in high school, and I'm like, wait, they're going to be out here soon. Like, and then I used to be an executive at Microsoft, and like, brilliant woman. So
get that, but problems with that term, empty nest. Like, there's got to be another way to talk about it. It's not that I have a problem with him growing up and leaving, and I'm so proud, and this is how life works. And luckily I wasn't just I do have my business, so I have other facets of my life. It's not like everything was wrapped up in my child.
Sure.
But it's still very emotionally hard. I've never had to take care of anyone that's just me. I've always had to look after another person. So this idea of like be able to being selfish is very rare and interesting to me. And I'm not saying that if you're single, you're selfish, but like there's such a different mindset shift in always thinking about the other person in your house and not just yourself. Yeah. So, anyway.
Well, so this is leading me to I have one last question for you, and then I have a comment before we wrap up. So and this just what you said just sparked this. What's the thing that you're going to do for yourself? What's the next thing you have that's just for Danielle on the calendar, on the table, travel, something you want to buy, anything top of mind for you?
I'm looking into doing apartment swapping so that I can travel, but like work and travel. And I think in New York City, it's because you're not renting your apartment. I believe that is legal. I have looked at my lease.
30 days or more, I believe. Yeah, you can do it, I think.
Oh, is that what okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what I'm thinking about is like, how do I travel more? How do I experience different places, even in the United States, not just out of the country? But my eventual goal, and I think we probably talked about this last time, is I do want to move to Italy at some point in my life.
Of course.
Whether part-time, full-time. So what does kind of living in other places look like for me? And so that's what I'm going to do for myself. And I am going to start maybe dating again because I took a few years off. Yeah. But we'll see. But I'm not going back on the apps. And that's a whole other discussion.
Not going back on the apps.
No. No,
we'll have you back on
in person or nothing. So
we'll have you back on when you're on the Amalfi Coast with your billionaire Italian husband or something, or billionaire Italian boyfriend. You'll be like, I'm coming to you from
oh my
the
God.
yacht.
They don't need to be a
I'm
billionaire.
yeah.
We're happy.
Well, not a billionaire, just like
know.
a multi. It's fine as long as he's got a nice boat and it's in the Mediterranean. You're fine.
There we go. You know, that's fine.
Yeah.
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 I get
Danielle,
seasick.
what?
We don't
Yeah,
need a boat.
seasick.
That's fine.
Yeah, don't need a boat. A nice beach then. At least you have a nice beach nearby.
Done. They have a beach house. Great.
A beach house. There you
Yes.
go. Let's see. I do have another question.
Yeah.
What are kind of your top spots you're eyeing to go and do an apartment swap for? Anything that's high on the list for you right now?
I mean, there's a lot of places in the US that I have not been to. I have not been to Colorado, so that is on my list.
Ooh, it's a good one.
I'm dying to go to New Mexico. Is another one. And then I mean, those are like the two probably number one right now. I mean, I love California, so could easily go back to anywhere in California and that vicinity. But yeah, in the US, I think those are my spots that I've not visited that I would really like to kind of check out. So, and maybe North Carolina also is like Asheville. I've heard good things about.
Oh yeah.
Feels like a kind of a Northeast enclave moved down south.
Yeah,
so,
and pay North Carolina state income tax.
Correct. Exactly. Is there one? I don't even know. So
I think there is, but it's probably a third of what we pay here in New York.
So
very
we'll
cool.
See. Like I think that the option for me is like, do I want to stay in New York? And I don't know that I will. So I want to see where else I could potentially land if I wanted to relocate. Yeah,
well, people need your in-person workshops and speaking everywhere, and a lot of your work is probably virtual anyway. So
it's both, correct? Yes.
Yeah, excited. People need everywhere. Super excited for you. Congratulations on this part of the journey and what's next. The last comment I wanted to make was I wanted to thank you for your NFL team removing the stress from me in the first round of the playoffs last year. Danielle is a Viking. Danielle is a Giants fan. Big Giants fan. I'm a big Vikings fan. And I said to my friend, I said, this season has been a complete aberration. We're going to get beat by the Giants at home in Minnesota. And it happened. There you go.
Oh, well, you're welcome. So
yeah, and I hope you keep Saquon. I'm a Saquon fan, Big Ten.
Same.
I love Saquon.
I was just having this conversation with someone because I was wearing my Saquon shirt the other night, and he's like, "You might have to get rid of that." And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to have to get rid of it." I'm like, I really hope they can figure this out because I don't know what else he thinks he's going to get, but I guess he's looking for guarantees. It's not the money, it's the guarantee. And I just don't know that anyone's going to give him that. So, but hopefully they'll come to can we just give him half if something happens or
something?
Figure it out. Come on, John Mara, figure it out. Get it together. God's sakes. So
it's so funny also that we're talking about, other than the salary cap, we're talking about like rounding errors for these people.
Correct.
Other than like the actual like NFL salary cap. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And I understand, like, you can't, it's already a slippery slope with athletes and how much we give them, and same thing with celebrities. But like at some point and this is like the whole thing with the writer's strike. Like at some point you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. How much money has been lost already by Hollywood, and they could have just given these people their deal and been done with it. And now you've lost billions instead of maybe hundreds of millions. So it's crazy to me.
If humans could get over the need to be right,
we probably all stand on whatever the principle is that they think they're upholding, right?
Yeah, so. Righteousness. And I say this as somebody who loves to be right and stand in their righteousness. I'm not saying this is I'm not over here being like, you all suck and I'm good at this.
That's right.
Danielle, I believe the term is you spot it, you got it.
Is that it? Okay. Fine.
Spot it, you got it.
That's fine.
Oh yeah, that person just wants to be right. I'm like, how is that easy for me to see? Well, that's because I
resemble that remark. Correct.
I resemble that remark. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I want to tell you, it was so good to have you back on again. Hopefully the Vikings beat the Giants this year. If they meet, they usually play them.
I don't know that either one of us are going anywhere this year. So let's just hope for an above 500 season, which is just my hope.
See, that's a whole different conversation. Well, yeah, so good to connect with you again. So good to have you on. Glad the audience gets to hear you. Everything's going well. Hope you're good, do well in the travels. Everybody check out, by the way, Danielle, last thing.
Yes.
We mentioned some free resources. You obviously have a big online presence. It'd be really weird if at the end you're like, well, what do we want to know about you? You're like, well, there's nothing about me out there. No.
Yes.
Like, so Danielle, where can people connect with you, find out more?
So morethanwordscopy.com is my website. If you sign up for my newsletter, you get a bunch of free stuff, of course. And it's just Danielle Hughes on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there. And Danielle Z. Hughes on Instagram. Those are the 3 places I hang out the mostest.
And if you're interested in an eligible bachelorette, she's not on the apps, DM her on LinkedIn and be like, hey.
Please do not DM me on LinkedIn.
Have you ever,
LinkedIn
have you ever been
a dating app, people?
Have you ever, is that like, I've been married for like, do people DM on LinkedIn for dates?
Yes, I've had a couple.
Really?
It's really inappropriate. So
it's weird. So what do they say? Like, I like your picture.
Hey, you're cute or you're pretty or whatever. And I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
When did LinkedIn become Tinder? What's happening here?
That is so weird.
I think there is a way to meet in a quote unquote professional setting and like make it something, but that is not the way to go about it. So, but if you tell me that you heard me on the podcast and you are interested, there's a way to do it other than you're so cute. Can I take you to dinner or something?
You're so cute.
Send me an email. It's fine. Or Instagram. DM me on Instagram. Then it's appropriate. Otherwise,
Instagram. Or, I mean, the opening line for Danielle is pretty easy. Like, I love your personality. She's like, this person gets me. We're going.
Tell me your favorite wine. That's the opening line. That's it.
There you go. Favorite wine and your personality. And by the way, do you watch The Amazing Race? I do too. We're offering. That's great. Yeah.
My dream is to be on it.
Just connect with you, Danielle. Yeah. Have a happy 4th. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Jason.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.